Yo, what's up everyone? It's me again, back with another video. Okay, so in this video, I wanted to just share with you guys a secret build that I've been working on behind the scenes. And while this build is definitely not one of my best, I thought it was pretty interesting, so I thought I'd just make a video on it anyway. So this is EK Ignite, right? And my main reason for building this build was that I wanted a build that had like pretty good clear, and I wanted a build that could like AFK the league mechanic to basically just farm a lot of Graftblood and T16s. So that's what this build is doing. That's the main goal of the build, and I think the build has, accomplished its purpose. This EK Ignite build with everything up is like 4 million damage or something. And the cool thing about this build also is that you can swap in Reap for a single target. It's exactly the same scaling. They're both physical base Ignite skills. So if you swap in Reap, you can like triple your damage on single target, which is pretty good. But yeah, so here's like a lead mechanic. Here's like a sample breach. And the clear is really good because you can fire in like every direction, right? So it's like super clean to do the lead mechanic on this build. And it's even better when you get the defend the lady ones, because you can just stay in one spot and just spam like this. And you can usually just beat the whole thing, sometimes without even moving. And then the fortress one as well is also super easy with this build. You just stay in the middle and you just spam EK and everything just kind of dies. And it's like very minimal effort, pretty good lead mechanic farmer. So that's the main idea of this build. But what you can't immediately see from just the gameplay is the absolute weirdness of the actual mechanics behind this character and its scaling and the defenses and everything. So I'll get into that shortly. In fact, I'll get into that right now. Okay, so as you can see, I have 3k life, but the build's actually not that squishy. And you'll see that I also have -37, -80, -74 res, but like I'm taking hits and I'm not dying, right? So, okay, so this may be a little bit complicated, but hopefully you guys can follow. If you're experienced in PoE, you probably will know what I'm talking about, but let's just get into it. Okay, so the main idea that I wanted to put together for this build is a full elemental to chaos conversion, like damage taken thing. So here in this build, we have 100% LE taken as chaos, which basically mitigates the need to have any LE res at all. And this is done with 3 mechanics. First, we have Divine Flesh, which gives us 50% of elemental damage taken as chaos. And then we have Incandescent Heart, which is 25 LE from hits taken as chaos. And then finally, we have Refuge and Isolation, which is 25% of LE from hits taken as phys. And this item drops from one of the new Uber bosses, can't remember which one. So in theory, with this, we have 100% LE taken as chaos and phys, 75 into chaos, and then 25 into phys. And then to mitigate those two, we're of course 90 chaos res, which is a pretty normal thing to do with Divine Flesh. And then also we build armor, so we have like 20,000 armor for that 25% of elemental damage that gets through. And that's the main idea of the defenses of this build, or the defensive setup. I really wanted to try out this negative res stacking, and then the negative res stacking also enables the use of Replica Nebulous, which is going to give us the maximum bonus of 450% increased elemental damage. So that's a pretty big chunk of damage, actually. And then it's also important to note that while Divine Flesh has all elemental damage taken as chaos, the helmet and the body only work for hits. So in order to mitigate that 50% of elemental damage that is not taken as chaos, that's like dots and stuff, we have to take Lethe Shade, which allows us to take 50% less damage over time if we've started taking dot recently. And then also the build gets Ignite immune by getting 100% reduced Ignite duration via Harsh Lessons, a Jewel, and then a Craft on the Ring. So we're basically Ignite immune, and the only thing that the build really struggles with is like random dots like burning ground, firewall, you know, cold dot areas, and also like the mana siphoner dude that's like lightning dot. But like other than that, the build's, you know, reasonably defensible. It's, you know, not super squishy. And if you look at the POB, the numbers is something like this. So with this full setup, we have like, you know, 17,000 LE hit. It's not a super tanky build. It is definitely on the squishy side, but like 17,000 max hit is like very similar to like what you would have with like a normal build with like, you know, 75 res and like 100% spell suppression or something like that. I'm actually curious like what a normal profile would look like. So what if we do like this, and then like plus 4,000 life, and then like 100% chance to spell damage. Yeah, so if you have this profile, like 4k life, 100% spell suppression, and then like 75 res, it's basically fundamentally the same as this build, which is kind of interesting, I think. So it's not super tanky, but like for T16s, it's like fine. And then the chaos res is 90, which is really good. You basically don't really care about chaos damage. And then you only do have 20k armor, so phys hits are kind of annoying for the build. However, we do take Shaper of Flames, which is not calculated in this max hit. So this phys max hit should be like 40% higher in theory, once you account for Shaper of Flames, which they did recently fix in a patch note, so that's good. And that's the main idea of this build, just get a bunch of negative res with LE to chaos conversion and then a little bit of armor. That is LE to chaos and phys conversion, and then use Replica Nebulous for damage. And then another weird interaction that this build takes advantage of is the Gray Wind Howls Graft tech. And someone made a video on this. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Fearless Dumbo who made a video on this interaction. But the main idea here is that you can use this graft to get anywhere from like 30 to 90% physical as extra elemental. And the way it works is you use this Archon's Tools belt, which summons Skitterbots. Well, it makes a summon Skitterbot's auras also affect you. So in a perfect scenario, you would have like, if I can replicate this, so I want to get 3 ailments from the Skitterbots, right? So if I click on my character, the Skitterbots come to me, I get 3 ailments, and then the Gray Wind Howls is going to consume the ailments on me, and then give me a physical as extra elemental buff. If it consumes all 3 ailments, then it will give me 3 times of this buff, and I'll get 90% phys as extra LE. So like this helps out the damage of this build a lot, but it is kind of finicky. But if you're just like walking around, you'll get like some ailments reflected from the Skitterbots. So this is going to trigger with either 1 or 2 or 3 ailments, but it's like 100% uptime on like at least 1, as long as you're like moving around and like casting. So that's giving us a little bit of extra damage. And we don't really care about the reflected ailments because the Scorch doesn't really matter, because we're a negative res stacker that converts like negative res to damage and also shifts everything to phys and LE. So Scorch doesn't really hurt us in the case that the shock and chill is consumed, but the Scorch is not. And then the chill and the shock is slightly mitigated by having reduced effective chill and shock crafted on the gloves, and then also Brine King and Garricon Pantheons for shock and chill reduced effect. Although it's also interesting to note that scaling the ailment effect on Skitterbots in this build is kind of a double-edged sword, because if you level up Skitterbots and use like Unbound Ailment support, you can make the Skitterbots have like a lot more effect, which increases your damage against the enemies, but also increasing the effect of this is going to increase the effect of the chill and the shock that is on you, because increased effective ailments and reduced effective ailments kind of cancels each other out in this game. It's like an additive thing. So Basically, if you want to be tankier, you can not scale ailment effect on Skitterbots and run like a level 1 without unbound ailments. But if you want maximum damage for the enemy, then you want to scale that. So that's kind of interesting. And that's basically it. It's just this weird negative res damage shift character. And then as for the actual like scaling of the damage, it's pretty straightforward. I just figured, you know, EK Ignite Prolif's really good for clearing breach. And then Incandescent Heart gives Elias extra chaos, which is good for Elementalist Ignite. And then the rest of it is pretty straightforward. It's just, you know, Elementalist, Golems, Exposure, Convergence, Physical damage, EK, you know, Fire damage, Fire.multi, damage over time. Pretty normal stuff. We dual wield Scepters because Nebulous gives a lot of flat, so we want to use a rare Scepter with a lot of .multi, and that will give us a lot of damage. And then, you know, Amulet is just +1 phys. You can also run a Gloomfang here, but in PoB, a perfect +2 Amulet is better than Gloomfang for single target damage. But like Gloomfang would also be good for this build. If you don't know what Gloomfang does exactly, I actually have one. Gloomfang basically with maximum catalysts can give you 42% of non-chaos damage as extra chaos damage. So you can just like chain this off of like a hydrosphere or like a wall of force or something. And this will basically give you like 42% more damage, which is in theory pretty good, but in practice, like a +2 amulet with like attributes and life is better. So, but yeah, Gloomfang is also possible. The clear might also be better with Gloomfang because with Gloomfang you have chain, and without that you have to anoint Pierce because there's like nowhere else to get Pierce because you can only craft Pierce on a helmet now. So you have to anoint Pierce, which kind of sucks because you lose the anointment. But with Pierce, it's like, you know, kind of good enough. And that's basically the main idea of this build. Oh, and then I also forgot to mention that the 90 Chaos Res is actually very easy this league because all you have to do is get Divine Flesh, which is 5 max, and then you run 2 small Chaos Clusters, which is +3 and +3, so that's a total of 11 already. And then you just run 2 of the new Fugitive Rings, which drops from Varun in the Breaches, and that's +2 and then +2 for a total of +15. So with just those 5 things, you can reach 90 Chaos Res, which is pretty good for Divine Flesh builds, although I still think Divine Flesh in general is kind of weak and probably should be buffed. I also forgot to mention that because Divine Flesh has all damage taken bypasses Energy Shield, we actually can't use Energy Shield as a defensive layer, whether it's like, it's not possible to go like Mind Over Matter, you know, we can't go EB MOM, you know, we can't go like, you know, just normal shield protecting life. So in order to minimize the downside of that, we have to run Divine Blessing. And so here I have March of the Legion, which allows us to use a Hatred Divine Blessing, and EK being a physical skill benefits quite heavily off of the Hatred Divine Blessing. And then, you know, because we have so much ES between Incandescent Heart, this helmet, and then also the Golem that gives you defenses, that's the Stone Golem, we have like 1.6k ES, so the Divine Blessing is like super easy to sustain. Oh, and then I'm also running a Rune Graft that is like, I forget where I put it, but I'm running a Rune Graft that is like buffs expire slower to like this one, to help with the Divine Blessing uptime mostly. And that's basically it. And then the tree is basically just like aura effect and like fire damage, fire.multi, and mostly normal stuff. Nothing out of the ordinary here. And then, yeah, Ascendancy is just like this. Golems, of course. Shaper of Flames for PDR and making all damage ignite. Exposure for damage and convergence on damage. And this convergence, while the area, I think the area of effect helps the ignite prolif, but I'm not sure. Someone will have to confirm that. But the damage bonus from this convergence is actually like 100% uptime in this build because the duration of ignite in this build is 5.62 seconds. So if I just continuously attack, then, you know, the 4-second downtime on convergence doesn't matter because the ignite is like longer than that. So it's just 30% more damage on single target. And that's basically it. And then for the skill setup, we just have a 6-link EK. You also are able to swap in Reap for a single target. So like right now I have like 5 million damage. And then if I were to use Reap, I would have 11 million damage. And if I used Val Reap, I would have 19 million damage. So you definitely can swap Reap for a single target if you want. But Ethereal Knives of the Massacre for clear and for the League mechanic is just insane. You can just like AFK the League mechanic with like 0 brain power. It's like super chill. And then just normal damage over time gems here. We are a cruelty build as well. Cruelty is just like 40% more damage in maps, so make sure not to run deadly ailments, because then that would make the cruelty effect go down. And then unbound ailments is also very important because it increases the duration of the ignite, which not only enables conversions but also makes the ignite prolif longer, so it's super good. And then aura setup is Determ for PDR, and then Malevolence for damage, and Herald of Purity as well for more damage. And then this is a classic Arcanist brand setup. Arcanist brand, Flammability, Elemental Weakness, Flame Surge, pretty normal for Ignite. Pretty normal Golem setup as well. Stone Golem for life regen and defense, and also to help with the Reap life cost when you do swap Reap. And then Flame Golem for damage and AoE. And then Chaos Golem for dot multi and Chaos Resistance. This Golem is actually really good for this build because we actually benefit a lot from the Chaos Res. So like if I take this off, I have like only 53 Chaos Res. So like this Golem makes enabling Divine Flesh a lot easier. And then just Frostblink for movement, and then Skitterbot's Unbound Ailments for the damage, and then Hatred Blessing with more duration, and then Leap Slam as well, as that's the only good movement skill we have with a double Scepter setup. And then the gear is pretty straightforward. Replica Nebulas, of course, for 50% increased elemental damage, and then another stat stick Scepter with like a bunch of dot multi and stuff. In a perfect world, this would have like plus gem level, but it's SSF and this is the best I could get, you know, from tree, so it's whatever. And then Refuge and Isolation, Incandescent combo for the conversion, and then March of the Legion for Divine Blessing. The gloves is just exposure on hit, ignite prolif, and then just like life and stuff. I did choose to go for double regen here, just to have a little bit more recovery. And then Amulet is Citrine Amulet for the attributes, and then +1 phys and life. And then double Fugitive Ring for Divine Flesh, and just like life Chaos Res, pretty normal. Archon's Tools for the Grey Wind tech. And then Flask is just whatever. Cinder Swallow helps a little bit for ignites. That's pretty good. And then for the graph setup, one of these is going to be the Grey Wind one. And this one's, you know, just free damage with the Archon's Tools setup. And then the other one is just Heart of Flame for a little bit more defense. Pretty normal. And then here I'm running just like double fire damage prefixes for ignite. And then this one I have Graftblood gained, and this one is chance to find ancient womb gifts, the only one that matters in this meta. And that's basically it. And then I am also running a cluster setup. These small ones are just like 2 passive chaos ones, pretty normal. And then yeah, for Divine Flesh. And then these mediums are burning damage mediums. Just ideally these would be like ignites deal damage faster, but Flow of Life is also fine for the life and defense. And then yeah, just try to get some damage on these. And then the large one is a Fire 1, 8 passive. Ideally this would be 3 notable, but it's SSF, so whatever. You could also run like an 8 passive minion cluster and get the Golem notable. That would also probably be good, but they're both very similar. Oh, I also forgot to mention that this build runs Stone Golem of Safeguarding, which is I guess pretty normal for Elementalists to run now. It just, you know, with a lot of increased buff effect, this makes you pretty tanky against melee hits. So I think this Golem's like really good. And that's basically everything. And then I also have like some 2 passive jewels here because I kind of ran out of stuff to take on the tree. just burning damage, whatever. And I do have one of these with reduced ignite duration, so I can get 0% ignite duration. And that's it. Yeah, and then, you know, EB for the Divine Blessing, and that's it. So yeah, all in all, kind of a weird build. You know, the build looks pretty straightforward. It's just, you know, EK Ignite. But behind the scenes, there's a bunch of weird shit. And while this build ultimately is not very tanky and kind of can't really do anything except farm the League mechanics semi-AFK, I think it's a pretty interesting build. You know, it kind of scaled in a different way than usual. And I like EK Ignite, and it is very performant in the League mechanics. So I just wanted to make this video, just, you know, talk about this build and put some of these ideas out there. And yeah, that's going to be it for this build. I'm currently mainly just playing this build to like farm, you know, ancient womb gifts. And yep, that's it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have kind of ran out of things to do in this league as like a side note. There was like a major patch that came out today. See if I can pull that up real quick. I don't want to put too many things into this video, but I just thought I'd quickly talk about this at the end of the video. So there was a new patch today where they basically, you know, buffed some scarabs and gave us more Graftblood and fixed some bugs, but that's kind of it. And as an SSF player, I'm not totally sure that, you know, this patch really benefited SSF that much, because these scarab changes are mostly like trade stuff. And yeah, now that I killed 10 out of 10 Ubers and got level 100 on Bone Shatter and tried out a couple different skills, I'm not too sure like what there is left to do in the league for me. And I'm not too sure like what I should like farm in the end game. So I may or may not play like 1 or 2 more builds. And if I do, I'll definitely make videos on that or maybe stream them. But I am kind of running out of things to do this league, unfortunately. They seem to have killed all the main interesting strats. And while player power has gone up a lot, the end game has not gone up similarly. So if you guys have any ideas on what I could do, I'd love to hear. Like if you guys have any good ideas, like interesting things to do in the game, or maybe like videos you want me to make, or like, you know, streams you want me to do, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll, you know, think about it and maybe try to come up with some more different content. I don't know. But yeah, might play a couple more builds, might not. We'll see. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys are having a good league as well. Hope you guys are having like something more interesting to do in the game than me. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Negative res stacking EK Ignite. And yeah, PoE will be in the description and stuff. And yep.